here's the exciting moment for therapists is that number one, at least from the point of view of interpersonal neurobiology, we now have a definition of the mind and a definition of a healthy mind. And when you look at contemplative practices, at least from my point of view, they are very integrative. That is, they allow energy flow to start moving away from the chaos and rigidity that is when you don't have integration, and move to widen our window of tolerance, and also to go in this central flow where you're flexible and adaptive and all these other things. So then the person says, okay, well, now you've got me interested. What do you mean? And I say, look, where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. So when people come with chaos or rigidity, which basically every form of human suffering is either chaos, rigidity, or both, it looks like, and you can read this in the Developing Mind graduate school textbook if you want to see the details, but it looks like human suffering comes from impaired integration. So then you look at a contemplative practice that is integrative, and it's not just integrating in the moment, like in the wheel of awareness, we differentiate the different things you could be aware of, including from awareness itself, and then link them. So it's an integration of consciousness practice. In the moment that's happening, but where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows, you're actually going to change the brain. So then a person goes, okay, I hear you, Dan, show me the evidence. So I said, okay, here's the evidence. When you look at the research, controlled studies published in some of the most rigorous peer-reviewed journals that look at, some people call it mindfulness practice, or you and I were in a meeting when someone said, no, that's mindfulness and compassion. So right at that meeting, when we were the other researchers, I said, okay, let's call it 3-pillar practice. And everybody took a vote and everyone said yes. So 3 pillars are training attention to be focused, training awareness to be open, and training intention to be kind. So some people say the first 2 are mindfulness, the second is compassion training. Some people say all 3 are mindfulness training, whatever. So I made up this new term in front of Jack and a bunch of other people. Let's call it 3-pillar mind training. And everyone said, that's cool. Okay. So when you study 3-pillar mind training, which would be called mindfulness or mindfulness compassion, but 3 pillars makes it so people don't fight with each other. What exactly is it? Training attention to be focused, awareness to be open, intention to be kind. What happens? 5 physiological proven outcomes that I'm going to mention to you, and 1 overall broad naming about what happens in the brain. If, when you and I first met, Jack, when this stuff wasn't known, someone were to sit down at that lunch table we were having and say, hey, Jack and Dan, this stuff you're talking about, it's going to make these 5 changes. We would say, well, what's the vitamin? Let's take it. Well, it turns out now we know, number 1, the stress hormone cortisol is lowered, so you decrease stress. Number 2, immune system function to fight infections. This is a great time during a pandemic to be able to do that. Immune system function is improved. Number 3, the way your heart in your chest communicates with the brain in your head, because you also have a brain around the heart and a brain around your intestines, is made more balanced. And that helps you lower blood pressure if it's high, lower cholesterol. So heart health is improved, number 3. Number 4, this is not a joke. You're actually going to use your mind with these 3-pillar practices to alter the molecules called epigenetic regulators. Epi means on top of, molecules on top of genes that control the inflammation in your body, to lower inflammation throughout the whole body. And inflammation, in some cases, can be the main cause of life-threatening diseases like certain forms of cancer and certain forms of diabetes. So lower inflammation. And then number 5, as our colleague and friend Alyssa Epel and her colleague Elizabeth Blackburn, and Blackburn won the Nobel Prize for discovering the telomerase system, the ends of your chromosomes that keep, like a shoelace, that little cap you've got, they keep the shoelace intact. These telomeres keep your chromosomes intact. And as you age or are under stress, you get less and less telomeres. And when your telomeres get short enough, the whole system of reproducing and keeping a cell healthy fails, the cell dies, and you die. So you are going to optimize your telomerase, the enzyme telomerase. Telomerase is how you say it, that repairs and maintains the chromosomes, is optimized with 3-pillar practice. So if I told you there was a vitamin that helped you optimize telomerase, lower inflammation by epigenetic changes, improve heart health, improve immune function, and lower stress, you take the vitamin in a heartbeat. If you had a little extra money, you'd invest in that company. Well, let me tell you, what Jack and Tara are teaching, what I teach in the Mind Science Institute, these 3-pillar practices have been proven to create the 5 physiological changes that, by the way, are what give your body resilience. And by the way, when we talk about adverse childhood experiences, they're probably the 5 mechanisms by which stressful relational experiences like abuse and neglect and other adversities we have in childhood, it's probably the way, in fact, you lead to medical problems later on. So no one's done that definitive study, but we know that you can improve these with 3-pillar practice. So let's take people with high adversity and give them that. The final thing I'll just say is the brain issue. You can, if you're riding an elevator, you can say the following thing. If someone says, what do these 3-pillar practices do? What is mindfulness and compassion? What does it do in the brain? I've got 1 floor. You say, and this is basically fits all the research, it integrates the brain. An integrative brain is a resilient human being because you're basically allowing every form of regulation, regulating emotion, attention, behavior, relationality, self-understanding. All these things are dependent on integration of the brain. And just for those of people who like to know, the corpus callosum linking the differentiated left and right will grow. The hippocampus that links widely separated memory areas to each other will grow. The prefrontal cortex behind your forehead, it grows and links the cortex, the lower areas of the limbic area, the subcortical regions in the brainstem, the body itself, and even the relational world all together. And then there's something called the connectome, which are the more subtly differentiated areas and how they're linked. All 4 of those are the ways we measure functional and structural integration, and all of them grow with 3-pillar practice. And the amazing thing is, independent studies of adversity, like abuse and neglect, show those are exactly the 4 things that are compromised in a human being who has a lot of adversity, like abuse and neglect. Now, we haven't done the study, but then you can say, okay, let's do these mindfulness and compassion, these 3-pillar practices for all of humanity to build our resilience, literally to integrate your brain in these 4 ways. And a study by Smith and colleagues in 2015, I remember it came out right when you and I were teaching, Jack, it shows that when you look at every measure of well-being, the one brain factor that predicts well-being, when they looked at every measure they could, there was one factor, how interconnected your connectome is, how integrated your brain is, basically. And that's what these practices do. Mindfulness and compassion practices integrate your brain, create the 5 physiological, boosters of resilience. So then I say, well, like when I did my wheel of awareness practice this morning, I said, oh, I have other things to do. I said, yeah, buddy, but you don't start today until you start with inner resilience building.